Hey everyone, well welcome back for chapter 2 of the book of Revelation. I'm sitting here with my mother-in-law Bev, who's going to be going through all 22 books with us. Very excited about that. If you hear anything in the background, we're actually underneath a severe thunderstorm warning. We live in Oklahoma. What can you do? So we're going to roll with this. We'll see how it goes, but
Yeah.
don't let this distract you from this. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So we're looking today at chapter 2, which is still covering that first section of the 7 in the book of Revelation. And today we're looking specifically at the first 4 of those 7 mentioned churches that we talked about yesterday,
Yes.
represented by the 7 golden lampstands. Now, it's really interesting because even though they are 7 different churches, they're still viewed as one. It's all the church of Jesus Christ himself. But what we see here, and I think this is so interesting, is each one of these churches that is addressed, they have attributes, both good and then some not so good, that Jesus addresses himself in this chapter. As we go through these, I think it'll be interesting because I think you yourself as the viewer will probably recognize, boy, that sounds like a church I've been in. Or maybe it sounds like the church that I attend or what have you. And again, while there's good things, there are some things that Jesus is also trying to correct here. Really interesting stuff to go through here today.
Yes. And it's relevant then to the church as a whole because they all read each other's letter. It went to the whole church. So it was like a counsel to the whole church.
Yes.
So it was relevant then to the church then, and it's relevant today.
Absolutely.
In the church today.
Absolutely. So what's the first church that we're looking at?
Well, Jesus starts each letter with an attribute of himself.
Okay.
And it's very specific to meet the needs of that church.
Okay.
In every letter, Jesus gives a promise to the overcomer. Notice it's individual, the overcomer. It's a personal decision, and that overcomer is defined in Scripture as the person who believes that Jesus is the Son of God.
There's always that choice. Are you going to do it God's way? Are you going to follow Jesus? Or are you going to reject what he has for you? Wow.
Absolutely. So Ephesus is the first church.
Okay. Now, Ephesus being, of course, and we went over this, the book of Ephesians, this was the letter that was actually written to that church at Ephesus. Okay.
And Ephesus is that hard-working church. They were full of good programs and outreaches, and they would even test any doctrine that came along to see if it was truth or error.
Okay. Sounds all positive so far.
It was really positive.
Okay.
But they had a big problem. They lost their first love of Jesus Christ himself. And Jesus says, you've got to return to that first place, that highest place of that first love.
Wow.
Loving Jesus.
So literally what is happening in this situation is the things that they're doing, they're good. They're very good.
Yes.
They have outreach programs. I mean, they're reaching their community, talking to people about Jesus. They're doing a lot of good works. But at the same time, they've started to neglect the relationship side of it with Jesus himself.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
It was kind of like Mary and Martha. Jesus was right there, but she's running around fixing all the meal for
Yes.
Jesus, and Mary's sitting there listening to Jesus, relating to him. And she was all upset, and Jesus said, actually, Mary has chosen the very best part.
Wow.
She's relating to me.
Wow.
So sitting and fellowshipping with him is what they needed to do. So Jesus basically had said, return, do those things that you did at first. Sit at my feet, know me, fellowship with me. And Jesus gives one of the most severe warnings to this church. He says, if you don't do those things you did at first, loving me, fellowshipping with me, I'm going to remove your candlestick out of its place. That light will be out and you'll no longer be part of the church.
Wow. So even though they're doing all these good things, I feel like that highlights something that's so important for us to grasp, which is that relationship with Jesus. That is priceless. That's before anything else.
Absolutely.
And I think so many times people get that backwards. Where, well, I'm doing these things for God, almost like I'm doing God a favor by doing all these works, and God is many times just saying, I want to spend time with you. I want that relationship. Wow.
And he talks to the overcomer. Now Jesus brings in that promise to him that overcomes.
Okay.
And that overcomer is that person in every single church who knows Jesus. And that promise is in the verse 7, Ben.
Okay, let's go ahead and read that. So in verse 7 in chapter 2, and this is Jesus talking, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God.
Yes, you remember Adam lost access to the tree of life.
Yes.
And now he says, you who believe in me, I'm giving you access again to
Wow.
the tree of life.
Wow. Okay, so now that's the church at Ephesus. Now there's a second church then that we're going to look at, and where's this one at?
Smyrna.
I'll be honest, I haven't really heard of Smyrna throughout the rest of the New Testament, yet here it is in Revelation. So what is unique about this church?
This church is experiencing extreme suffering.
Wow.
And persecution. In fact, many are being killed for Jesus Christ. Polycarp, a bishop in that church, was martyred in AD 156 because he refused to call Caesar Lord.
Wow. Now that's interesting because I think of many places in the world today that are still somewhat like that. It's if you don't convert to our religion, we'll kill you. If you don't, if you attend a church, you can get thrown in prison. So they have these underground churches. This stuff still happens in the world today, even though many times in our Western civilization, we don't often think of it.
I don't think we really realize how much the church as a whole is being persecuted today.
Wow.
Probably 80% of the church has some type of persecution going on. It says that Smyrna is persecuted for 10 days.
Okay, now that number 10, we've seen that before, coming back to the symbolism and numbers
Yes.
again. Okay.
10 means fullness of testing. So basically, this church experiences that fullness of testing, the most severe persecution of all. But Jesus has the answer. He says, don't be afraid. I'm the first and the last. I died and came back to life again. What a promise. And he goes on to say, if you're faithful, even unto death, you'll receive a crown of life. Now, in the book of Revelation, it uses two Greek words for crown.
Okay.
One is a crown of rulership,
Okay.
and one is a crown of victory.
Okay, so rulership and victory, two different crowns.
But this crown is the word for victory.
Okay.
So when you have the crown of life, you have the crown of victory.
Wow.
Jesus' promise to the overcomer is so relevant to this church. It's in verse 11.
Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and read that. Verse 11, still Jesus speaking. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt at all by the second death.
That is such an incredible promise because the second death is the eternal death of the wicked.
Wow. Now, of course, the first death being that we're all born into sin. We're all born into this death camp, if you will, that came through Adam. But the second death
Is that eternal death of the wicked.
Wow.
Now the third church is Pergamum.
Pergamum. Okay,
Yes.
another one, not very familiar to us. Okay, so Pergamum is the third church. What's unique about this church?
It's loyal and true to Jesus in spite of living in a city where Satan lives and has his throne.
Okay, so Pergamum is in the middle of some horrible stuff that is happening.
Yeah.
And that's where their location is. It literally says that Satan has his throne in this city.
Jesus said it's a place where Satan lives and Satan has his throne.
Good grief.
These are Jesus' words. His
Wow.
description of this city.
Wow. And a church is planted there.
Right in the middle of it.
Wow. Okay. So Satan literally had his throne here according to what Jesus is saying. So this is a bad place to be in a lot of ways, but yet there's a church here.
Shining light right in the middle of the darkness. This place that's a center of worship for four of the most important pagan cults.
Wow.
Zeus, the primary Greek mythical
Zeus,
god,
right,
being
from
one
Greek
of them.
mythology.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so this was a primary center of worship, not just for him, but three other pagan gods as well.
Absolutely.
Good grief. Okay. Well, kudos to this church just for being there, right?
But in spite of that, the church never denied Jesus' name, even when the pressure was the worst. Some were killed even
Wow.
for believing in Jesus.
Wow.
But they had a group in their midst that followed Balaam's teachings.
In the church.
In this church,
Okay.
they had a problem. It was these group of people that followed Balaam's teachings.
Okay, now Balaam, for those of you who don't know, again, this harkens back to the Old Testament. He was really a pagan sorcerer, and he was hired at one point to try and put a curse on the children of Israel. Now, of course, the children of Israel followed God, and so God didn't allow this to happen. So what do you do if you're in Balaam's situation? Now, this is interesting and kind of unique. But this guy figured out a way to try and cause a curse to come down on the children of Israel themselves, really without him having to do anything. So the way he did this was he devised a plan to get the children of Israel to worship a pagan god. Now, I'll be honest, you would think like, okay, these people have crossed through the Red Sea, they've had the 10 Commandments given to them, they've seen all these crazy miracles. How could you possibly pull these people away and get them to start worshiping some stone statue, or in this case, this false pagan god that was called Baal? Balaam trying to get them to worship Baal. How do you do that? And the way he did it was by introducing sexual immorality as a part of the pagan worship practices. So there were things like temple prostitutes, all of these things that were wrong, but that were tempting to pull these people in. They also even had sacrificial food things that were offered to Baal, where they would partake of food that had been given to the idols. All these kinds of horrible things, but he used it as kind of a backdoor way of introducing pagan worship to the children of Israel. So this is a bad guy that we are talking about. And so at the end of it, they really did turn from God, who had led them through all of these different trials and things that he brought them through, to worship this pagan god Baal. Unbelievable.
It's shocking when you think about it.
Right.
So those are the people that were following after Balaam's teachings. But
Okay.
also in this church, there were others who were called the Nicolaitans, who followed the teachings of Nicholas.
Okay.
Now, Nicholas was one of the 7 people chosen to be leaders and serve the church in Jerusalem. But then he turned away from the true doctrine and started teaching a false doctrine, saying, well, the flesh is insignificant and of no concern, so live any way you want.
Now, this is a guy who should have known better, obviously.
Yeah.
He was selected as one of the 7 leaders at the Church of Jerusalem.
With Stephen and Philip. And
Wow. So some pretty big names here. I mean, these are heavy hitters, and yet here he is introducing false doctrine into this church. Wow.
And do you know the names of Balaam and Nicholas? Both mean to conquer people.
Both Balaam and Nicholas mean to conquer people. Both their
Exactly.
names mean that.
One
Wow.
in Hebrew, one in Greek.
Wow.
Exactly. The teachings of both of them ended in sexual immorality and worshiping false gods. And Jesus says, don't give in to those men. The attribute that Jesus provides is that I'm the one that has that sharp, double-edged sword coming out of my mouth. I divide truth and error.
Dividing truth and error. Wow. Amazing.
And interesting, Balaam in the end was killed by a sword.
Wow.
Jesus is the sword.
This is great. Do you see what I mean? All of this, nothing is written in the Bible by accident. That's what I love about this. You know, it's Revelation. When you're looking at it in this way, it's amazing how much it ties and connects things together.
And the promise to the overcomer is so relevant to this church.
Okay.
And it's found in verse 17.
All right, let's go ahead and read that. Okay, so verse 17, still Jesus speaking. In fact, I think Jesus is the one talking through this whole chapter. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna to eat. And I will give him a white stone, and on the stone a new name written, which no one knows except him who receives it. All right, Bev, what in the world is happening here?
Well, notice he's going to give him that hidden manna.
Okay.
That-
Manna, now I remember this from the children of Israel. God provided manna in the wilderness for them to eat.
And Jesus applied it in the New Testament, said, I'm that bread, eat of me.
Okay.
Remember those people ate food offered to their idols in their way of worshiping? He says, no, you eat me. You eat my bread. You eat what I'm telling you.
Okay.
I'm going to give you that manna to eat. And he goes on to say that new stone, I'm going to give you a white stone. The white stone is that life-giving stone.
Okay.
And the new name, known only to you, is so incredible because fathers name their children. So our new Father names us with a brand new name, which is known only to the person who receives it. In other words, they have a unique place in God's heart.
All right, now the fourth and final church in this chapter is...
Thyatira.
I don't know how to say that. Thyatira.
Did you know that name?
Not a very familiar one to most of us. Okay? All right, so what is unique about Thyatira?
Well, that church is full of faith and love and serving people. They have a really love for Jesus, I believe.
Okay. Sounds great. I'm sure there's a problem. What is
But
that?
there is a big problem.
Okay.
And this church, by the way, is the 4th church.
Okay.
And 4 being the number of the world.
Oh, okay.
And in some ways, the way they look at all the other religions around them is just like the world looks at it.
Okay.
They are tolerant. In other words, they don't want to offend anybody.
Okay.
So they're tolerant of everyone and everything.
Interesting.
They would say, live and let live. I believe what I want. You just go ahead and believe what you want.
So it's almost as if, and I've seen this actually even on some mission trips that I've been on, where if you introduce Jesus, they'll say, oh, that's fine. Yeah, we believe in Jesus. I'm just going to place Jesus next to all these other gods that I also believe in or that I also accept.
And so it's kind of like one religion among many.
Yes. Okay. Wow. So even though they're doing all these good things, they don't really care if you also don't believe what they believe. It also
Exactly.
doesn't matter if you don't believe in Jesus because, well, it's all the same
We
anyway.
do.
Like you said, live and let live.
Live and let
Okay.
live.
Wow.
Coexist.
Wow. Okay. Like the bumper sticker. You've seen those. You've seen those.
So this church tolerates the wicked woman Jezebel.
Now she's brought up here in this chapter, Jezebel from the Old Testament.
from the Old Testament.
Okay.
And King Ahab was the king of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And he married Jezebel.
Okay.
Jezebel was the daughter of a foreign king. And they all worship Baal.
Mm-hmm.
The one,
This god that we just spoke of,
Yes.
the pagan god Baal. Okay.
that pagan god who was the main god over the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
And basically his name even means master, husband, owner. And she called herself a prophetess of Baal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she taught Satan's so-called deep, dark secrets. And as she was teaching that, I mean, this was the center of her life, was worshiping Baal.
Okay.
So Satan would become the master of all his followers.
So really, she was controlling that relationship in many ways, influencing him to do these evil things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Building the temple and putting idol to Baal and having all of Israel start worshiping Baal
Wow.
instead of God.
Wow.
And he became the most evil king so far of Israel.
Wow.
In fact, King Ahab built a temple to Baal and put an idol to Baal right in the center of it.
Wow. So this isn't some foreign king. This was Israel's king,
King.
married to this evil woman Jezebel, and is saying, forget God, we're worshiping Baal from now on, and had that much influence that she influenced him to do this to the entire country. Wow.
Exactly. Eventually, they had a showdown on Mount Carmel between God's one prophet Elijah and 1,000 prophets.
Right. Now I remember this story. Elijah's actually even mocking them and making fun of them because the competition, if you will, was to say like, okay, we're going to build 2 altars. Whichever one gets set on fire, basically by itself from the gods, from God Jehovah or from these pagan gods, then we'll know who's who.
Absolutely.
Was kind of the contest. And while it's happening, he let them go first, and he's mocking them the entire
That's
time.
right.
I remember laughing when I was reading portions of this because he's like, oh, maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Maybe, like,
Yes,
where's your God
exactly.
at? Kind of mocking them the whole time they're doing this. And they're they're cutting themselves, doing all kinds of things to get an answer from Baal, but nothing happened.
And so now it's evening, time of the evening sacrifice. And Elijah builds an altar, pours 12 big barrels of water all over it.
Soaking it wet, so it's not easy to light on
Soaking
fire.
wet. And immediately the fire comes down out of heaven and hits that altar, burns up the sacrifice, burns
Wow.
up the altar, the stones of the altar, and all the water.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
Completely
burned up the stones.
consumes it.
The only thing I have ever seen burn up stone is lava. So, I mean, that gives you an idea of what was coming down from the sky. That's crazy. So, no questions asked after this between who was God.
In fact, Israel said, the Lord, He is God. The Lord,
Wow.
He is God.
Wow.
And God later judged Jezebel and her family, and all of her children died.
Wow.
Jezebel.
Her
God-
lineage completely stopped then.
Yes.
Wow.
And Jezebel represents all false religions of the world, and all of those on the side of the kingdom of darkness.
Anything running contrary to Christ really gets represented by this.
So it isn't tolerating all other religions.
Yes. Wow. And of course, that doesn't mean that we treat them with any less respect, kindness, love, anything like that. But it simply means that you don't just accept what they're teaching as true.
And if you really do love them, you really want them to become sons and daughters of God
course.
and accept Jesus Christ.
Of course, yeah. No, I've said this before to people. It's kind of like, when you know Jesus, that's nothing to keep a secret to yourself. It's the most amazing thing you've ever been given. Why would you not share that with other people?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. To this church, Jesus calls himself the Son of God. Nowhere else in Revelation is Jesus ever called the Son of God. Just here.
Okay.
This being the 4th church, it's a really important point for the whole earth to understand. The dividing point between any religions is whether they believe that Jesus is indeed the Son of God.
Wow. That's a powerful point.
And that has to do with all this issue of tolerance.
Interesting. Wow. Especially this instruction given to this church that Jesus is the Son of God. He makes it very specific. Wow.
Exactly. All mankind has to make a decision to believe that Jesus is indeed the Son of God. We're all called. All out of Adam's family are called to be sons or daughters of Jesus Christ himself,
Wow.
the Son of God.
Wow.
The promise to the overcomer for this church is also very relevant to this church.
Okay.
It's found in verses 26 to 29.
So starting in verse 26, and he who overcomes and keeps my works until the end, to him I will give power over the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron. They shall be dashed to pieces like the potter's vessels, as I also have received from my Father. And I will give him the morning star. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
It's just interesting to me that Jesus, the Son of God, has absolute rulership over the earth. And he's making it really clear that we are to rule and reign in his kingdom and be involved in his kingdom.
Interesting.
So Jesus the King restores the authority that Adam lost. He also goes on to say that he will give the overcomer the morning star.
Okay.
And Jesus is called the bright morning star.
Oh, wow.
It's that star that pierces the darkness in the beginning of dawn and says there's a new day. And so, in other words, he's saying, I'm giving you myself, the morning star.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. And that's just 4 of the 7 churches that we still have 3 more to go through tomorrow to wrap up these 7 churches for the first section of Revelation. Wow. It's a lot to take in, but this is why we wanted to make sure that we go through this to some degree as thoroughly as we can while still keeping it brief and concise and trying to give an overview of the book. There is so much here. I mean, it's like eating at a buffet, right? You can only eat so much. But no, with all seriousness, thank you so much for taking us through another chapter, Bev. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you guys for joining us out there who have been watching this. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and sharing this with your friends and family. Well, as always, guys, go ahead and come back next week on Monday for the start of chapter 3. Hope you guys have a great weekend wherever you may be watching this from. So appreciate you guys being a part of this with us. God bless you guys. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.